Hello there! Every year, many great films come out, but what are the films that were visualized in the director's mind but ultimately never came to be? There's so many films that have so much potential, but for one reason or another, they don't get made. So, I'm going to count down the top greatest films never made. These are films that were never finished, nor released, or even started production. So, this does not include films that were taken away from the directors and reassembled without their consent. So no The Thief and the Cobbler, because that was finished and released even if it wasn't Richard Williams' vision. So with that understood, let's begin. Dogma 2. Since he released the first film, Kevin Smith has had the idea of a sequel in his mind for a while. Apparently he wanted to have the entire third act of the film essentially be the apocalypse and touching on other religions like Islam. However, due to the hate mail and occasional death threat he got for Dogma, and him having a wife and child since then, Smith said he has no plans to take on Dogma 2, as he now has a family to protect. That said, the next Kevin Smith film will be a religious horror film called Red State, so he's not too afraid of entering this sort of topic, but him taking on Islam will probably cause Dogma 2 to never see the light of day, as well as him closing the book on Jane Silent Bob at the end of Clerks 2.
The world's against us, dude, I swear to God. What's he like?
God? It's got a great sense of humour. Take sex, for example.
Sex is a joke in heaven.
The way I understand it, it's mostly a joke down here, too.
Get it?
The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. Terry Gilliam is such a great filmmaker, and yet he might be one of the unluckiest directors in Hollywood. First, the ending of Brazil is completely changed without his permission. Most recently, Heath Ledger passed away during the filming of The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, so he had to rewrite the screenplay to work around this. However, Gilliam's most disastrous production is one that didn't even get finished, partly inspired by the story of Don Quixote. The filming was plagued by problems like continuous overhead airplane noises, a flood that washed away equipment, and his lead actor, Gene Rocafort, was injured. In the end, the production was cancelled, and an entire documentary called Lost in La Mancha even documented it. Terry Gilliam has been recently trying to get the film off the ground again, but he has had trouble getting funding, so it looks like Terry Gilliam's Don Quixote will once again be relegated to his imagination. Kingdom of the Sun. Though it later morphed into The Emperor's New Groove, the original film was absolutely nothing like Mark Tindall's version before he came aboard. Though I like The Emperor's New Groove a lot, there is a part of me that is mighty curious what Kingdom of the Sun would have been like. Roger Allard's vision was of a serious Inca-set version of The Prince and the Pauper, where a llama herder and a lookalike emperor switch places. Meanwhile, Yzma had a plan to block the sun, and the film would also have been a musical. Sting's wife even made a documentary called The Sweatbox about the making of the film, but Disney wants to pretend that The Emperor's New Groove was always the way it was. However, aside from the casting of David Spade and Eartha Kitt, the use of the song My Funny Friend and Me, and the llama transformation subplot, they have very little in common, hence Kingdom of the Sun being eligible for this list. The only proof of this film's existence that Disney acknowledges are the two unused songs that they have included on the soundtrack. Frady Cat. This was originally going to be Ron Clements and John Musker's follow-up to Treasure Planet, and their first computer-animated feature, and the premise sounded very interesting. Simply put, it was going to involve a cat living in London who gets thrown into an Alfred Hitchcock-style plot. As somebody who's recently gotten into the films of Hitchcock, I think this has a lot of potential, and apparently the story reels were very well received among the other animators, as well as Disney animation head David Staten. However, the executives sitting in their high offices didn't think families would be interested in seeing an homage to the director of North by Northwest and Vertigo, and as such the film lacked marketing potential, so the project was unfortunately scrapped then and there. Soon enough, Clements and Musker left the studio, only to return when John Lasseter brought them back to direct The Princess and the Frog. Recently there were rumors that they were pitching another project to Lasseter, and I thought it would be Frady Cat brought back to life. However, instead they are apparently making a hand-drawn animated film based on Terry Pratchett's Discworld books, involving a man who works for death. Good luck, Ron John. I hope it's a good one. The Tramps New World. Though Charlie Chaplin retired his iconic little tramp character in 1936, that's not to say there weren't musings at the possibility of bringing him back. Film critic James Agee wrote a screenplay in the late 1940s that would involve the tramp trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic New York City. It would have been a terrific commentary on the atomic bomb and the general fear happening at the time, and seeing the tramp in that situation could have inspired many very funny moments. However, Chaplin passed on the idea, and so G's script was locked away. That said, we did get a somewhat similar take on that deal with WALL-E, featuring a Chaplin-esque robot living alone in a post-apocalyptic world. In fact, it should be no surprise that Andrew Stanton and the rest of the Pixar crew watched silent comedies as inspiration, and I would not be surprised if this unmade project crossed their mind. Aryan Papers. Based on the book Wartime Lies by Louis Begley, this was about two Jewish family members who assumed the identity as Catholics in order to survive the Holocaust. Considering how important a topic this is to keep alive and to learn not to do again, I would continually support making more films about that terrible period in time. But Aryan Papers is especially special because it was a project that was going to be directed by Stanley Kubrick. The first draft of the screenplay was actually written, and Jurassic Park's Joseph Mazzello was cast as the lead character. However, it fell through when Schindler's List was released, and Kubrick had already received comparisons to Platoon due to the close release dates of that and Full Metal Jacket, and he did not want to relive that. So instead he went on to make Eyes Wide Shut, which is one of my favorite Kubrick films, but it still would have been good to see Aryan Papers come to fruition. Fantasia 2006. As a huge fan of Disney's two concept features, I very much would have liked to see another one, and producers Roy Edward Disney and Don Hahn had been planning on getting one off the ground for release in 2006. Like the other Fantasias, this would have utilized different classical musical pieces, but the plan was for it to be a worldwide theme by using different international tunes. However, due to Disney putting cutbacks on the animation department, among other reasons, it was cancelled. On the positive side, 4 shorts were completed: Mike Gabriel's Lorenzo, Bishadi Hunt's One by One, Roger Allers' The Little Match Girl, and most famously, the infamous long-in-development Salvador Dali-Walt Disney collaboration Destino, which is on the newly released Fantasia Blu-ray. With Roy Disney's recent death, it's uncertain whether or not the Fantasia will be greenlit, but with John Lasseter greenlighting a new Winnie the Pooh, here's hoping he considers producing one of these. Brad Bird's The Spirit. That's right, the director of The Incredibles was at one point going to make an animated feature based on Will Eisner's The Spirit. The film was even being developed alongside Star Wars producer Gary Kurtz, and the plan was to make it a dark and faithful version of the comics, similar to what Bruce Timm would later do with Batman the Animated Series. Unfortunately, though the screenplay was praised by executives, they couldn't understand why anybody would want to do a non-musical, non-family animated film at a time when Care Bears the movie was such a huge hit. Not to mention, the 1980s was not the strongest decade of animation. In the end, the rights were lost, and Brad Bird would have to wait until 2004 to make a serious comic book animated feature. Of course, that wasn't the final time that one of Bird's ambitious projects had trouble getting funding, as he has been trying to get his San Francisco earthquake epic 1906 off the ground for a while, and he is actually directing Mission Impossible 4 so that he can prove to the studios that he can make the transition to live action films. However, I wouldn't mind seeing Bird attempt to get The Spirit off the ground again. Stanley Kubrick's Napoleon. Yep, another Stanley Kubrick film, but I'm a Kubrick fanboy, so it comes with the territory. He had originally planned on following up the magnum opus, that is 2001: A Space Odyssey, with a massive comprehensive biopic on the life of Napoleon Bonaparte. He considered Jack Nicholson for the lead role, and Audrey Hepburn was a possible choice for Josephine. He also did extensive research by reading over 500 books on his life, searching for the locations where Napoleon actually stood so he could film there, and even got the sand from the Battle of Waterloo. So with all that hard work put into production, why did he not go ahead as planned? Well, the film Waterloo was released in 1970 and was a gigantic flop, the point where MGM dropped that funding of Kubrick's dream project. So he jumped ship to Warner Brothers, where he immediately made A Clockwork Orange, and he was given complete creative control on his films, but Napoleon was never made. Though if you watch Barry Lyndon, you can kind of get a general idea of what Kubrick might have done. And now my pick for the top greatest film never made is Night Skies. When it comes to films that were never made, I cannot think of one I want to see more. This project came around when Columbia Pictures wanted Steven Spielberg to direct a sequel to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But he wasn't interested, and instead started developing a story based on a supposedly true incident of a Kentucky family being terrorized by aliens. The screenplay was eventually written, Tobe Hooper was hired to direct, and Rick Baker was brought to create the creature designs. However, during production of Raiders of the Lost Ark, Spielberg showed the screenplay to Melissa Matheson, and she got very moved by the subplot of the family's son befriending the nice alien. Thus, that Saw idea morphed into E.T. the Extraterrestrial, while Tobe Hooper still managed to direct a Spielberg-produced film about a family being terrorized in the form of poltergeist. Meanwhile, the one alien among the many bad ones idea was inserted into Chris Columbus' screenplay for Gremlins, and though his designs were never used, Rick Baker did contribute alien designs to Spielberg-produced blockbuster Men in Black. So even though Night Skies was an inspiration to those aforementioned great films, I still would like to see it get made. I am so fascinated by this project, I even wrote a short screenplay based off of it. So Spielberg, if you're interested. In fact, when I saw the teaser trailer for Super 8, the first thing that came to my mind was, is this Night Skies finally being brought to life? Spielberg's producing, you have a very talented director in the form of J.J. Abrams making it. It will apparently be done the style of 1980s science fiction films, and they even mention Area 51. So maybe, just maybe, this is Night Skies brought to life. That's my theory at least, and I hope it's true, though we won't find out until June. See you next time.